I haven't manually scheduled a single post for the past 3 years, but I happen to show up across every major platform automatically. This agentic content system that I'm going to show you posts on average about 67 content pieces a week. Most founders think that in order for you to show up, you have to be more consistent, you have to be more disciplined, and you just need more willpower in order to create content. But here's the thing. I created a system that said, screw willpower, I'm going to do it differently. With this agentic system, I only talk to this mic for 20 minutes, and after I'm done talking to this mic for 20 minutes, it gets sent to a production agent that creates the actual video or visual asset, and then finally it gets sent to a distribution agent where it posts to every single platform at the best publishing time to post to these platforms. I'm so excited to show you how we did this. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into today's video. I'm super excited to share with you this agentic content system that I've built, and it's definitely an upgrade from the previous systems that I've created. Now, a couple things for you to know. This is how this agentic system works. Now, in terms of timeline that it took me to build, it took me about 3 months for me to build the system, to test, to iterate it, and it's still going through an iteration process as things change. But I wanted to lay out the framework so you can see how I think, but more importantly, how I go about building this system. This is what it looks like at the end of the day. Now, the first agent that comes to work for me, we're going to call her Carly because she is really actually our content offer email strategist. And what Carly does really well is she goes ahead and pulls and reviews my offers, and then every single week she selects one offer for us to promote, to create content around. Her job is to create the content calendar. She's going to be creating it for content on social media, but also content for my email. So let's kind of zoom in a little bit on what the output of her job looks like. Basically, she comes in once a month, she reviews the previous analytics to see what content performed well, and then she selects one offer for the week. So this will be an example of 1 week that she will plan. But she'll basically create the content plan for the entire week for socials, Monday through Friday, because I like to post every day. And then she'll create the content plan for emails that go out. I tend to schedule emails about 3 times a week. Another thing that is important for this content plan is that she creates a set of questions that she needs my answers to in order to create the content that's going to go out and execute for the content calendar. Carly will go in and create all of the content plans for me, and that agent will store that into a record for me to reference. And so those questions actually get sent to Megan, who I'm calling our Monday intake agent. So every Monday, Megan will review the content calendar that Carly created. And basically on every Monday, I get a ping on my phone that says, here are the 7 to 8 questions that you need to review and answer. Now let's zoom a little bit about what Megan does and how her job responsibilities really lie in. What she actually does is she pulls context from pretty much every facet of my life. She pulls context from my notebook. She pulls context from my sales calls, my client calls, email, my calendars, basically as much context as possible, because context is the thing that will help create answers for, but context also really does a good job of filling in the gaps in the way that AI can't actually live your life. She'll actually pull context to bring them in to create better outputs from a content perspective. So she'll create a set of questions for me that's not only based on what Carly created as part of her content plan, but also a part of what we're going to be doing as part of this intake process. And it's actually a 2-step process, because what this Monday intake agent does is that initially it goes ahead and asks me those set of questions that it created here, but then it will ping me for my answers. And so this highlighted section is the only time where I actually come in, and every Monday I will spend 20 minutes answering this voice memo on Whisperflow and answering those questions with code. And what I really like about having the Claude app on your phone is that you can actually see when those agents are running. And so I'll get notified when I have those questions ready for me, and I will go ahead and respond with that voice memo. Now, after Megan receives my voice memo, what will end up happening is that she will take my answers and have it basically go through a router. And so I like to create 7 content pieces a week, as well as 3 emails. What Megan will do is she'll just take the content plan and identify, is my answers good for a B-roll video? Is it good for a hot take video? Is it good for a carousel? It's determining on my behalf. And if Megan decides, oh, it's good for a B-roll video, then I'm going to create a brief for my agent to go into Polly, which is a production agent. And so Polly, what she does is she basically looks at all these briefs, whether it's a carousel, hot take, or B-roll, and she actually produces the content for me. She'll create the carousel, and I'll show examples of that, and she'll create the hot take. Now, once when all those assets are created, it gets loaded back into a database. I personally love database. And then once when it's ready to schedule, it's the published date. What actually ends up happening is we have an automation on the background that takes that record, that B-roll video that we just created, and sends it to a distribution agent. The reason why I'm putting it to a distribution agent versus an automation is because with an agent, I'm able to basically have it optimize the scheduling time for every single platform. And so essentially, like, we're creating content, this distribution agent's job is to make sure it shows up on the best time. And so I'm going to share a little bit of what that looks like. Let's go ahead and take the time to talk a little bit more about the ingredients. Like, how much does this cost to run? What does this look like? So in terms of Claude and having the tool of, we're using Claude routines because in the Claude Code environment, basically you can run actions without having your computer being on to trigger that. And so that comes out to about $20 a month, depending on your usage. You might need to be a higher plan or lower plan. It's up to you. Then we also have Airtable. I haven't actually paid for Airtable in years because I love the product so much that I just keep referring people to it. And so basically, if you refer enough people, you free plan. And so then we also have is a tool that allows us to basically assemble and create those videos on demand. And that comes to about $50 a month. And then we have HTML to CSS. That's kind of when we're creating like custom images or we're creating, carousels, things like that. That comes out to, I believe, about $14 a month. And then we have 11 Labs, which comes out to about $26 a month, I believe, if you have the professional voice cloning plan as part of that process. And then finally, we have Eden. Eden is a really great tool for identifying research. So I use that tool and I'm on the monthly plan for now because I'm still testing it and we'll see. So far, it's been good. There's a month plan. And so those are the ingredients of what you need to see what this actually looks like in real time. See how this actually works. So we have a Claude routine that basically refers to my database and hosts all my Claude routine instructions, my skills, and things like that. And basically the instructions for this agent is just to go ahead and go into that database and pull. I need to change the name out of head of social media to Carly, but essentially with this, it will go ahead and execute these whole set of instructions. Now I created in Claude Code, and then eventually when I liked the output, I tested him many times. Like I said, this was like a 3-month process. This is not an overnight. It basically created these set of instructions and it executes these that we see here. And it basically, the output of that is it will update the record strategy for our current month. So I'll identify like, okay, what are my KPIs? And then what is the week one that we want to focus on, the offer, the inputs that we need, things like that. So it is just basically a strategist more than anything, and it executes on my behalf. Now let me go ahead and show you our Monday intake agent. This is basically the routine that we're running to basically execute this. Very similarly to the previous routine, it's having this entire set of instructions in terms of what records you need to load, and then basically the context that it pulls from, and then it actually writes that we see here, and then continues a bunch of steps. To see an example of when this content agent or this Monday intake agent, Megan, when she comes to work, is essentially it loads the records and it identifies like what we're working on in terms of what's the offer for this week. And then it actually pulls a bunch of context as it sees fit. And then basically it asks me a set of questions for me to answer. And then I will just respond to those questions. And so as you can see, my response is voice memo. I use a tool called Whisperflow to voice memo and talk through all of these questions. And the reason why it's so important actually to do this is because one of the things that I wanted to tell, like, is there a way for this agent system to not have any part of me involved, where it actually creates the content from scratch? You don't need to give any input. And the truth is, it can do it, but the quality of it, I didn't personally like. Like the posts, I didn't like the way that they came out. I just felt like it was very sloppy, like AI generated, and it really just validated my point that if you want good content, it needs possible about you, your life, your insights, your vision, your story, and AI just can't do that. And so it's one of those those things where it was a trade-off, or like if I wanted to create good content, then I need to spend time actually giving context to the agent. Now for me, I only want to spend 20 minutes on this. So this is where my questions and my voice memo comes in, and it answers for the agent. And so then essentially what it does is it basically creates the content lineup for the week of Monday through Sunday week. And then what it will go ahead and do is it will give me some briefs for me to reference. And then also what it does is it actually creates some LinkedIn posts on my behalf. And then it will actually create threads or Twitter posts as well. And then finally, execute and create 3 set of emails for it to go out to my email list automatically from those voice memos. Now, let me go ahead and share with you a little bit of what the production agents look like. So a couple of things will happen from it will create the briefs essentially that we're going to be creating. And so these are the briefs would share all the context that we're pulling from. It will also share the brief itself in terms of like everything that the agent needs to know in order to create its own content. And so once it gets loaded into here, it will trigger this agent router automation. And so with this agent writer, essentially a new record comes into this briefs table, and then depending on the content type of it will go ahead and send it to its own designated production agent. So if it's a hot take, it'll go down this route. If it's a b-roll, it'll go down its carousel forth. And so you're probably wondering like, well, how does that actually look like? Well, these production agents, they actually fall under specific routines. So I have my b-roll agent, which is part of Content OS that we see here, my hot takes agent, and then finally we have a carousels agent so these are the agents that are running on the back end. These are and you can see on the back end that this basically just runs automatically, because the way that when we send it through this router, we basically can call upon those agents when it's being called upon essentially. And so what it will do is when those agents are running, it will essentially create the assets for me. So this is an example of what my content calendar actually, and so here could be a video where it actually generates, and so it has a b-roll video, and then it actually, this is the HTML to CSS tool that I mentioned, where I believe it's like $14 a month, and it actually, this whole piece right here. Another example of what the carousel agent actually creates for me. So this is actually an example of the carousel that we see, and it actually creates all of this post. And I'm using the HTML to CSS MCP to actually create this on my behalf. So it creates those carousels. And then essentially, as we can see, we have specific dates. Once when it goes into this particular view within my database, it's basically going to say when the publish date is today, a record's going to enter this system. And so once when it enters that particular system, we are actually going to create this automation, and does is that when a new record comes into that, it's going to go ahead and actually call upon the distribution agent that we see here. And then it will actually, this is a separate branch where if we're actually filming a YouTube video as this one, and on the day that it's actually scheduled, it will go ahead and create the article for me automatically on Medium. So essentially from there, let me show what this distribution agent does is once when it receives it will actually go ahead and use Zernio to go ahead and load it and actually schedule the post. So let me go ahead. It's not perfect. I'll definitely admit to this. It definitely needs some tweaking over time. I noticed that it needed some changes because the API changed, but essentially when a trigger arrives, I can see it and then it will update accordingly. Let me show you like a successful post so you can see how it looks like. Okay, so here's the example of what that successful looks like. It looks like I got the record that we created, and then essentially it identifies the best time to schedule that platform. And then so here's an example of a successful distribution agent where basically it found, and then it goes ahead and actually pulls in the Zernio MCP. I didn't mention that, but for Zernio, I believe it's like $6 depending on what accounts, how many accounts you linked up to it. So I think I pay like $30 because I have about like 6 that are linked to the platform. And so essentially what it will do is it will identify the best time to post it, and then it will individually schedule it to every single platform that it was scheduled. And we can see now the output of that is that it will load into my posts, and then Zernio will go ahead and actually schedule automatically on my behalf to every single platform optimized to that specific platform's timing. So as we see, that's pretty much all I got. I really want to say thank you for watching this video. Some free ways you can support me. Definitely go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe for the channel. And then finally, if you want to join my newsletter where I do more deep down breakdowns of things like this, then definitely go ahead and check the description below so that you can go ahead and join the newsletter. And then finally, if you're looking to have a system like this built for you and your business, then go ahead and check out my systems audit and I'll happily audit your business and we can go from there. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.